Welcome to Blogging for Business. This is week 2, and in this module we'll be talking about creating customer profiles. Last week you developed a blog title, you formulated a tagline, and found the blog's niche or niches. And now you have to decide who is it that you're going to talk to. What's your target audience? You don't want to do this off the cuff because what you determine here will dictate how competent your blog content is, meaning how much it will get linked to, how many comments there will be, and how successful your blog will become. Your blog is only as good as the conversation it creates. And you can't have a conversation if you don't know who you were talking to. So let's walk through this. Imagine you are going to have a blog about saving the Chesapeake Bay, and you are going to be coming from the perspective of the environmentalists. You'd have to say, who am I going to be talking to? Who are the key players in this niche? It's likely that you'd come up with people like this. The farmer or developer that is believed to threaten the bay. The people that are sportsmen, the fishermen, the boaters, the swimmers, the vacationers, the people that have fun on the bay. The watermen who work on the bay and harvest it, making their living off the bay. And then the environmentalists who want to protect the bay at all costs. And then finally the politicians, because they have a role in forming legislation that protects the bay. And they also can influence the regulatory process for regulating what you can do in and around the bay. So there are 5 possible, what we would call customers, for lack of a better word, or targets, people that you would be talking to. So once you've done that, you have to dig in to the blogosphere and find out about them. But what you will find is that the customers that you identify will often be directly linked to the categories that you put on your blog. Having a whole lot of categories, like 10, 15, 20, 30 categories in some blogs, just shows us that lots of bloggers don't think it through ahead. They think, I want to do a blog post on this, and they go ahead and they do it, and they say, well, what category would this go? I don't have a category. I have to make one for this. It's much better to target your blog posts towards categories that directly fit your customer profiles. So for example, a category that the farmer or developer might dictate would be things that threaten the bay. Sportsmen would identify things that fun on the bay or recreation on the bay. Working the bay would be linked to watermen. Protecting the bay would be linked to the environmentalists. And regulating the bay would be linked to the politicians. So you'll find once you do this research, it will probably bring you to your categories. These are the 6 points that you use when you're trying to create the customer profile. If you take somebody like the waterman, you'd say, how is his function linked to this niche? Well, certainly I can say off the top of my head, the waterman's linked because he makes his living off the bay. And he's passionate about making that living. He wants to make money just like every businessman. But the waterman is also going to be passionate about protecting the bay because if it's overfished and it can't produce what he has to harvest, then he's out of business. What kind of problems and struggles? These are endless in this niche. So in your research, you'd want to pull out a handful that are very important, or maybe some that aren't really noticed and could be becoming important. What solutions are there to those problems? What gaps exist? And gaps are different than problems. Problems have a way that they can be solved. What a gap is just something that nobody's addressing, a need that needs to be filled. Sometimes people in the niche aren't even aware of the gaps, but if you find out about it and you can put a post in about how to fill that gap, you can create some very energetic conversation. Finally, what is controversial? Now, this is a controversial subject. The whole blog is controversial. So I could certainly identify some controversy. But if your blog was about knitting, or your blog was about sailing or herb gardening, controversy isn't as easy to identify. But it exists. There's always differences of opinion. And when you can identify what is controversial, you can create conversation. And that is very powerful. Once you get these answers, you'll be able to round out each customer profile and refer to it often. But you go into the blogosphere to find the answers. And the great thing about blogs is two things. One is that the content continually changes, so it isn't just static content that sits there and stays the same. And secondly, there's conversation. The comments are really key to listening in on the conversation and understanding the perspective of these potential customers. First, you have to find the blogs, and here's some good scanning, a good way to scan the blogosphere. There are search engines devoted specifically for seeking out blogs. Google Blogs is one. Technorati is probably the biggest. Technorati is a search engine that you have to apply to be in. If you want to be listed in Technorati, you have to write out what your blog is about and do a whole application and even plan a piece of code in your blog that they can then ping so that they keep the spammers out. So very good search engine. It's very lean, and it's easy to find stuff in there. WordPress blog also has, WordPress.com has a search function for all the WordPress blogs that are hosted on the WordPress server. And that's a very useful tool for finding blogs. And then blogsearchengine.com, that's a paid service that people pay to be in, and it is categorized so you can look based on category. There might be agriculture or travel or technology, and you can just look at the blogs that have paid to be in there based on those categories. The other thing that I would suggest is going to Google and typing in blog search engines, and it will deliver you a list of different ways to search blogs. And that should help you with it. Once you've got some blogs that you've found, when you do search them and you go looking at blogs, be sure to look at the comments, because the comments is where the conversation is. That's where it's easiest to find answers to those 6 points. Secondly, this is where you'll want to populate your iGoogle homepage, because as you're going through these blogs, if you see one that's good, when you come across a good one, be sure to put it on the feed on your iGoogle page so you can continue to listen to the conversation. When you're creating content, having that aggregate, that iGoogle aggregator full of different varieties of stuff in your niches, especially, I think I would have a tab for each one of the customer personas. I kind of have that in my Google homepage. So if I want to look at something that's just on travel, or I want to look at something that's on writing, or I want to look at something that's on social media, I have them on different tabs, and I can go and listen to those conversations when I read them. So populate your iGoogle aggregator, as well as look at the comments to really identify where the conversation is when you're building these customer profiles. So your assignment this week is to create 5 customer profiles based on those 6 points, and then write them up and turn them in through NiceNet just like a regular document. If you have any questions or problems, you can post them on the conferencing section on the online class so that other people can see and also comment. Have a good week and good luck on your assignment.